Apollodia is buzzing tonight, full of nobles in their finest clothes, chattering endlessly about one thing. The capital thrives on gossip, and tonight's rumor is almost too outrageous to believe. Rosalind Idris Apolludan. The name alone stirs up everything: curiosity, shock, disbelief. Everyone knows her as the emperor's sister and the empire's only Grand Duke, but those titles come with stories, and none of them are dull. She's always been different. Not the dainty kind of noble who smiles over tea and pastries. No, Rosalind has always preferred the company of knights, the clang of steel, the sweat of training grounds. Nobody can say when she stopped wearing dresses and started striding around in pants, sword at her side, but nobody dared question it either. That's just her. She does what she wants. The current rumor, though, is something else. A servant. Not just any servant, but one she's supposedly taken as a lover. A noblewoman, no, a Grand Duke, sharing her bed with someone the upper class barely considers human. Half human, half beast, they're called, but apparently that hasn't stopped her. It's the kind of scandal that spreads faster than fire, with every version sounding more ridiculous than the last. Someone practically shouts their shock, convinced it can't be true. A Grand Duke? With a slave? It's insanity. Yet the more people talk, the more they want it to be true. Scandal like this doesn't come around every day. Rosalind, as always, doesn't bother confirming or denying anything. Why would she? The chaos suits her. While the nobility sip their wine and speculate, she's probably sharpening her blade, completely unbothered. The truth, as always, will come out when she's ready. Until then, Apollodia can only buzz with anticipation. The elderly man claps, grabbing everyone's attention, smiling. He tells them they're wasting time gossiping when the princess's birthday gala is about to begin. He reminds them the royal family is hosting it, and even the rarely seen Grand Duke will attend. The suggestion spreads like wildfire, and the crowd shifts toward the grand event. Night falls, and the castle glows with light spilling from every window. Guests pour in, wishing the princess a happy birthday. But the atmosphere changes when someone announces the Grand Duke's arrival. Heads turn as she enters, commanding the room with every step. She's wearing a blue dress that shimmers like it's made of stars, open-backed and bold, paired with sparkling blue shoes. Her blonde hair gleams under the lights, and her amber eyes glint with confidence. Nobles stare, unsure if they're awestruck or scandalized. Whispers ripple about the dress being foreign, but their focus shifts quickly. Beside her stands a man. Brown hair, amber eyes, skin the color of rich chocolate. He's striking and unfamiliar. Murmurs rise as people ask who he is. Someone mentions a rumor, their voice barely above a whisper. Another connects the dots, pointing out that this must be the slave everyone's been talking about. Shock spreads through the room like wildfire. A servant, not just at the gala, but standing beside the Grand Duke, hand in hand. Eyes dart between them, trying to make sense of it. The man keeps his face calm, but inside his thoughts churn. He looks at Rosalind, who meets his gaze without flinching. He tells her not to laugh, and she calmly replies that she isn't. He pushes further, saying she shouldn't even laugh in her heart. She smirks, reminding him that whatever she feels is her own business and that it's boring for anyone to meddle. The maid is quickly trying to rectify the situation, telling the little girl to hand over the drink and scolding her for taking something from a stranger. The little girl looks up at him with a mischievous glint in her eye, saying that she thought the drink would be special since it belonged to the prince of a distant mainland. He's thinking to himself, "Wait, she thinks I'm a prince?" And before he can even try to correct her, the maid swoops in, picks up the little girl, and makes a quick exit, saying bye-bye as they leave. He's left standing there, feeling a bit bewildered, and wondering how this misunderstanding happened. He runs his hand through his hair, thinking that this is just great. Now everyone thinks he's a prince. Rosa walks up to him, a sly grin spreading across her face, and asks if the little girl is cute. He's still trying to process what just happened, and Rosa drops another bombshell, saying that the little girl is her niece, Melody. Fenrir's eyes widen as he realizes that Melody is the one who's been spreading the rumor that he's a prince. Rosa's explaining that she told Melody that he's a prince, and he's wondering what she was thinking. Rosa launches into this elaborate story about how he's actually Prince Fenrir of a distant continent, and how he was accused and kicked out of the empire due to a war for the throne. He's listening to this, thinking that it's all a bit much and wondering how Rosa came up with this wild story. Rosa's saying that she's decided to help him and that she'll join the war as a general, wearing a mask to protect her identity. He's feeling a bit overwhelmed, wondering when Rosa planned all of this and why she's only telling him now. Rosa's looking at him, a sly glint in her eye, and saying that she can tell what he's worried about just by looking at his expression. He pulls her in close, trying to reassure her, and Rosa's laughing, saying that her niece is smarter than she looks, and that she won't believe he's a real prince. Rosa's saying that Melody likes to imagine scenarios like this, and he's wondering what he's gotten himself into. She taps his shoulder, saying she needs to greet the Emperor, and that he should stay where he is. He hesitates, asking if she really expects him to stand alone. She offers an alternative, suggesting the balcony, where he can close the curtains and avoid everyone. She promises to return later. Her tone is casual, and she doesn't wait for a response. As she walks away, her every movement draws the room's attention. The man watches her, thinking about her words, while the crowd continues to buzz around him. Eyes widen, and whispers grow louder. Rosalind's confidence leaves them all stunned, and the man knows one thing for sure. She's impossible to ignore. He's thinking to himself, as soon as Rosalina left, everyone's attitude changed. He's feeling a bit exhausted. The reality is way more draining than he imagined. He storms over to a curtained door, moves the curtain aside, and walks out of the room, leaving the audience looking on in surprise. He lets out a sigh as he gazes out at the grand garden, feeling a bit suffocated, like he needs some fresh air. He looks a bit down for a moment, but then he's interrupted by a memory of Fenrir warning him that today's the youngest princess's birthday party, and everyone needs to be on high alert. We see a flash of him and the main girl in bed together, and it's clear they have a strong connection. Back in the present, he touches his shoulder, which has a hickey on it, and thinks to himself that Rosalind's been sneaking around again. A girl walks up to him, and from the back, he's wondering who this kid is. She looks familiar, but he can't quite place her. Fenrir turns around to see a young blonde girl peeking out from behind the door, looking like a miniature version of Rosa, with a curious expression on her face. His eyes widen as he wonders why there's a kid here, and the kid points at him, asking a question. He looks down at the wine glass in his hand, feeling a bit relieved that the attention is off him. She asks him something, and he's taken aback by her forwardness. He looks at her, annoyed, thinking that kids are so curious, always getting into things they shouldn't. He hands her the glass of wine, and she grins, looking pleased with herself. She takes a gulp, grimaces, and makes a face, clearly not enjoying the taste. A maid rushes over to the doorway, looking frantic, and he wonders what's going on. The maid walks up to the kid, scolding her, and he realizes that this must be the princess. He's thinking to himself, "Princess?" wondering how he missed that. The kid looks up at the maid, and he can see the resemblance to Rosa. It's uncanny. The maid is lecturing her, telling her off for taking a drink from a stranger, and he's watching the exchange, feeling a bit amused. The kid looks up at him, and he can see the mischief in her eyes. She's a little troublemaker. He's quiet for a bit, then speaks up, saying that if Melody finds out he's a former servant later on, she'll be upset. Rosa's not worried, though, saying that Melody's personality is similar to hers, so she doesn't think she'll be upset. Plus, she adds, he wasn't a servant in the first place. She pulls him in for a kiss, and the audience gasps in surprise. He's a bit embarrassed, saying that everyone's watching them. Rosa's unfazed, saying that of course they will be. They separate, and she cups his face, saying that she's craving him. He smiles, and they decide it's time to head home. The moon's casting a soft glow over the castle, and Rosa's sitting on a bed, wearing a robe. A dark-furred wolf with amber eyes looks up at her, and she scratches under his chin, asking if she woke him up. She apologizes and tells him to go back to sleep. As she gets into bed, the wolf transforms into a human. He gets closer to her, stroking her chin, and tries to undress her, but she stops him. Instead, she brings him in for a hug, saying they should just hug each other and go to sleep. His face grows bored, and she says, "Good night, Fenrir." As her hands graze over the scar on his back, she's reminded of the first time they met. This takes her back to the past, to the imperial capital Apollodia, where there's a place called the Green Mansion. It's a mysterious place, and Rose is thinking about how she first met Fenrir there. She's lost in thought, remembering the events that brought them together. The Green Mansion holds secrets and stories, and Rose is reflecting on how it all began. The Green Mansion is nestled deep within the Green Forest, resembling an ancient castle straight out of a fairy tale. This place has got some serious history, being the oldest mansion owned by the royal family. People come and go, but no one stays here for too long, except for the emperor, of course. And then there's Rosalind Idris Apolludan, the one person who's made this place her own. Rosa's sitting on a couch, looking a bit out of it, her maid hovering around her with concern. The maid asks if she's okay, and Rosa rubs her temples, clearly in pain. The maid offers to call the doctors, but Rosa declines, saying it's just a headache. Just then a man walks in, clears his throat, and coughs into a black handkerchief. He announces Lady Allen's arrival, and Rosa's expression changes, a mix of curiosity and wariness. Lady Allen bursts in, a whirlwind of energy and charm, her honey blonde hair shining in the light. She hugs Rosa tightly, and Rosa hugs her back, a smile on her face. Allen's eyes sparkle with excitement as she leads Rosa to a metal cage in the corner of the room. 3 women and a man are gathered around it, their faces serious. Rosa's confusion is evident as she approaches the cage, her eyes scanning the scene before her. Allen's face is flushed with excitement, and she can't wait to show Rosa what's inside the cage. The atmosphere is tense, and Rosa's senses are on high alert, wondering what's going on. Rosa's eyes widen as she takes in the sight of the cage, her mind racing with possibilities. Allen's smiling, clearly pleased with herself as she waits for Rosa's reaction. Rosa's thinking to herself, isn't it a beast man? The person in the cage is bound, gagged, and blindfolded, looking super vulnerable. Allen's gesturing to it, saying she found it by accident at an auction, and then she remembered that Rosa's house had beastman slaves before. Allen's going on about how beastmen are super useful. With good training, they can fight against trained knights and be great guardians. Rosa's raising an eyebrow, saying guardian, but he's so young. Allen's giggling, saying, oh my, beastmen grow really fast. After 2 years, he'll become a real man. Then Allen leans in closer to Rosa, saying she can't do it when they grow up, because they can only be tamed when they're young. Like Allen said, if they don't take beastmen when they're young, it's impossible to make them subordinates. Because beastmen grow up without knowing who their master is, they won't be loyal to anyone and only care about their partner. So if Rosa wants to command beastmen, she has to tame them when they're young. The fastest and easiest way to do it is by using a drug that messes with their mind. Rosa's looking at the child with blindfolded eyes, handcuffed hands, and transported in a cage, wondering if he knows his fate. Rosa breaks a sweat, rubs her temples, and says, Allen, she's sorry, but... Allen interrupts her, saying, oh my, it's late, the cage is too big, so it took a long time to transport. She really wants to talk to Rosa more, but she has another date. Allen's saying goodbye, and Rosa's watching her leave, still trying to process what just happened. Rosa's shouting after Allen, but she's already laughing and walking away, saying she'll come again soon. The butler from earlier calls out to Rosa, asking what she's going to do now. Rosa's lost, contemplating the situation, thinking to herself that apparently buying beastmen to make them slaves is legal in the Empire. She's wondering if everything that's legal is actually right. She collapses onto a chair, feeling overwhelmed, and a maid rushes over to her, calling out her name. Rosa waves her off, saying she needs wine, and the maid rushes off to get it. The butler asks if Rosa feels uncomfortable. Should he return the beast man? Rosa sighs, saying she can't just return it like that. The butler turns to her, asking what they should do with the beast man, and Rosa says they should give it a bath, put it on a bed, and get rid of the cage. She also mentions that they'll have to call Noah. Next thing we know, Rosa's having tea with an elderly woman, Eleanor Greenwood, who's saying that all the urgent matters have been handled. Eleanor mentions that the wound will heal in 2 or 3 days, and Rosa's surprised, asking what wound. Eleanor explains that beastmen have the ability to heal quickly, but the scars on the beastman's body are from being hit in the same place multiple times. Rosa's speechless, horrified by what she's hearing. Eleanor's a rare noble lady who attended the academy and became a doctor, specializing in taking care of beastmen. Rosa thanks Eleanor for coming quickly, asking what kind of drug was given to the beastman that's keeping him from waking up. Eleanor says she's never dealt with this type of wound before, so there's nothing she can do. Rosa mentions that she was going to give the beastman back to Alan, but Eleanor's surprised, asking why. Rosa says she changed her mind, deciding that if she can, she'll give the beastman a better life. She can't stand the thought of him being in a worse situation. She plans to let him go when his body recovers and tell Alan that he ran away. Eleanor's skeptical, saying that letting him go might not be the best idea. There might not be a place for him to go back to, and even if there is, it could be dangerous for him. Eleanor explains that beastmen who are captured often have their territories violated, and going back could be like walking into a trap. Or maybe he was born into slavery, which means he has no place to call his own. Either way, if Rosa lets him go, he'll probably get caught again. Rosa's looking sadly into her tea, wondering what to do next. Eleanor asks her why she can't keep the beast man by her side, and Rosa says it's not because he's a beast man. It's just that he's still a child. But Eleanor corrects her, saying that he's not a kid, he's at least 20 years old. Rosa's shocked, saying that's impossible. He looks like a child. Eleanor explains that maybe when he finds his partner and grows up, he'll completely turn into a human form. Rosa's intrigued, asking if that's really possible. Eleanor says that not all beastmen can do that, but a Karen child like him might be able to. His species is super rare, and Eleanor's never seen any documentation about it. And to make things even more interesting, his black skin is even rarer. Rosa's mind is blown. She had no idea that beastmen could transform into humans. She's wondering what other secrets this mysterious creature might hold. Eleanor's watching her, a knowing glint in her eye, and Rosa can tell that there's more to the story. She's eager to learn more about this enigmatic beast man and his possible transformation. Rosa's thinking that even if some amateur slave hunters think the beast man's black skin is a mutation, it's still not a good idea to sell him, especially since he was a gift from Lady Allen. Eleanor's getting all worked up, clenching her hand and saying that if she feels something is precious, even a little, she'll try to get it, no matter what it takes. Rosa's watching her, amused, as Eleanor turns red and grits her teeth, saying she'll use money to take it. Eleanor's telling Rosa that she shouldn't let the beast man go, saying that she didn't send him back because she's worried. Rosa's muttering to herself, saying no, and Eleanor's calling her out, saying that if she really didn't care, she would have kicked Alan out. Eleanor's saying that Rosa always wants to get rid of the root of her worries, and Rosa's looking at her, knowing she's right. The moon's high up in the sky now, and the two women are standing in front of a carriage. Eleanor's saying that it's pretty late and she's leaving. Rosa's offering her to spend the night, but Eleanor's declining, saying she has another appointment tomorrow. She's telling Rosa that she'll try to find a place that protects beast men, and Rosa's watching her, knowing that Eleanor's got a soft spot for the creature. Eleanor's saying that she wants to take him to her home, but it's not big enough. Rosa's glancing at her, saying that Eleanor should have agreed when she offered to find her a house. Eleanor's smiling, saying that she'll still deal with it, but Rosa should ask her again in 6 months. Rosa's raising an eyebrow, wondering if Eleanor will agree then. Eleanor's stepping into the carriage, closing the door, and smiling at Rosa through the window. She's telling Rosa that if the beast man wakes up, she should call her and she'll be right there. Rosa's crossing her hands, smiling back and saying all right. The carriage is driving away now, with the horses pulling it forward. Rosa's watching it go, then turns and heads back into the castle. Inside, she's watching the beast man tremble in his sleep, his mouth open and beads of sweat dotting his face. Rosa's looking at him, feeling a pang of worry and responsibility. She's wondering what she's gotten herself into and what she's going to do with this mysterious creature. Rosa's gently placing the back of her palm on the beast man's forehead, feeling his temperature. She remembers what Eleanor told her earlier, about how the Karan population drastically decreased due to large-scale hunting for experiments about 70 years ago. Rosa's intrigued, asking if it was really because of experiments. Eleanor mentions that there were rumors about a special ability that only Karans possess, but it was later confirmed to be fake. Rosa's curious, asking what kind of ability it was, but Eleanor's hesitant to share more, saying it's not important. However, she does emphasize that the fake news led to the deaths of many Karans. Rosa's staring off thoughtfully, processing the information. A new day arrives at the mansion, and Rosa's observing the chaos caused by the Beast Man. He's scratched the furniture, broken some, and even injured a maid. The blue-clad butler's explaining the situation, saying that despite his lack of energy, the Beast Man's still causing trouble. Rosa's watching as the Beast Man growls from atop a cupboard, his eyes fixed on her. She gestures to him, asking the butler what's going on. She thinks to herself that she heard he was awake, so she quickly finished her breakfast and rushed to the scene. The butler's sighing gravely, saying that they tried to feed him soup, as per Eleanor's instructions. However, when they got close, the Beast Man jumped around and didn't even look at the food. Rosa's asking if they've tried talking to him, pointing out that he's not a 1-year-old kid and should understand human language. The butler's responding, saying that they've tried talking to him, but he just keeps growling. Rosa's slapping her forehead, frustrated, and the two glare at each other. Rosa's telling the Beast Man to come down, but he's growling at her instead. Ignoring the protests of her guards, Rosa approaches the Beast Man, determined to figure out what's going on. Rosa's telling the Beast Man that he's causing a lot of trouble for everyone, and she's not exactly the type of person who gives second chances. However, considering what he's been through, she's willing to give him another chance. She gestures to the injured maid and explains that the people around him aren't going to hurt him. They just want to bring him food. Rosa emphasizes that she has no intention of using him as a slave and that she's the one who called the doctor to help him. She even offers to let him go if he wants. The Beast Man stops growling and becomes moody, but Rosa's firm, telling him to come down immediately and apologize. The two glare at each other in silence, with the butler and maids watching anxiously. The tension is palpable until the Beast Man suddenly screams, making everyone jump. He falls to the floor, and Rosa looks on, speechless. The help thinks to themselves that he's quite an arrogant kid. Rosa directs the butler to clean the room and reduce the number of cleaners. However, she then drops a bombshell, saying that they shouldn't give the Beast Man food or water until he begs for it. The maids shriek in protest, and the butler thinks to himself that Rosa's being incredibly childish. It seems like a small battle has begun. The next morning, Rosa wakes up, looking a bit rough around the edges. Her hair's tied up with a red scrunchie, and she's rubbing her temples. She has to admit that the Beast Man has impressive physical strength, or maybe it's just that she underestimated him. Either way, she's intrigued. The maids are freaking out over the damage caused by the wolf boy, shrieking about the broken chair and expensive curtains imported from abroad. One of them thinks to herself that he's making a mess every hour, wondering where he gets that kind of strength. Rosa's walking down the hallway, thinking that if he keeps this up, there'll be nothing left in the mansion. She notices something on the floor and says, "Huh?" thinking it looks like blood. She sees that the kid broke a vase and got injured, but he wouldn't let them get close to bandage him. Rosa follows the trail of blood and thinks that he broke the window, but that's impossible with human strength. The windows in the house are made of high-quality glass with magic to prevent theft. Even if he's a Beast Man, it wouldn't be easy to smash a window equipped with magic. Rosa wonders why he didn't just open the window if he wanted to escape. Making such a mess must have consumed a lot of energy and physical strength, but the kid still hasn't asked for anything. It seems that a maid secretly brought him food because she was worried, but it looks like they've made another mess. When the maid gave the Beast Boy the food, he made a mess of the place and threw the food away. Normally, Rosa should punish the maid for disobeying her orders. But then she sees the chef giving the maid a closed platter of food in a quiet corner. Rosa thinks to herself that, well, let's skip it this time. Just then, someone yells, "Your Highness!" And Rosa turns to see a maid who's blue and out of breath. The maid says that the kid is gone. Rosa's sitting with a book on her lap, thinking to herself that she thought he'd bow his head and apologize, but it looks like her prediction is wrong. Moreover, during these 4 days, the kid didn't eat or drink water. Rosa's wondering what's going on with this mysterious beast boy. Rosa's thinking that no matter how physically strong a beast man is, it's impossible to not be devastated by going without water for 4 days. Humans would die in that situation, and she's wondering how the kid is still alive. She pauses, considering whether she should pretend she doesn't know anything. If Noah the doctor finds out, she'll probably get angry, but Rosa reminds herself that she chose to take care of the kid in the first place. It's not like she's responsible for him, since someone else brought him to the mansion. A maid approaches her, trembling and sweating, and says, "Your Highness?" Rosa tells her to try to find the kid, thinking he's probably somewhere in the mansion. The maid says yes, but unfortunately, they couldn't find him anywhere. Rosa's standing in front of the glass doors, watching the sunset, and thinking that the maids couldn't find the kid anywhere. As the sun dips below the horizon, Rosa's resting on a railing, watching 2 maids and the butler talking among themselves. One of the maids brings out a lantern, and Rosa says that if the boy ran into the garden, it would be difficult to find him at night. The maid smiles and says they can't leave the boy alone. Rosa stares at them quietly, thinking that if the boy ran away and fainted, she'd have to deal with the consequences. She wonders if she should have just ignored Noah's words and let him go in the first place. Suddenly, it dawns on Rosa, and she dashes into the mansion. The butler sees her running and says, "Your Highness? Where is she going?" He rubs the back of his neck, wondering what's going on. Next, we see the maids at twilight, searching for the wolf boy. One of the maids screams, "Hey, hey, where is he?" Rosa joins them, walking around the forest, and then she sees a gazebo. She thinks to herself that he's probably not there. If the boy ran away from the palace for another purpose, it's not in that direction. Rosa's finally found the wolf boy lying at the base of a tree, his face down. She pulls him closer, assessing his condition, and touches his face, thinking that she knew it. He must have been exhausted. She figures that he tried to find somewhere to hide before he couldn't resist his thirst anymore. His instincts led him to search for a place with water, and since he was stuck in his room all day, the garden outside the window was his only reference point. So he broke the window and ran towards the garden, going deeper into the forest in search of water. Rosa's wondering why he didn't just drink the water the maid gave him. Why did he have to be so stubborn? She takes in his disheveled appearance and thinks that this kid ran all the way here just to hide from people who were worried about him. Does he really hate bowing to humans that much? Would he rather risk his life than trust what humans have done for him? Rosa realizes that for a child, this behavior might just be a matter of survival. As she picks him up and carries him towards the mansion, Rosa thinks that before she can teach him anything, she needs to build a foundation that shows him he's living a safe life. She's surprised by how light he is, thinking that he's thinner than she thought. Rosa says to herself that she's not the type of person who gives second chances, but she's already given him 3 chances. He should know he's the only one getting this kind of treatment from her. She thinks that she needs to teach him that he's safe now, and that she's not going to hurt him. And that's when she'll be able to start teaching him manners and rules. Rosa's determined to help him understand that he doesn't have to be so scared and stubborn all the time. She's going to make sure he knows that he's got a safe haven now, and that she's not going to let anyone hurt him. Rosa's sitting in a dining chair across from the wolf boy, who's picking at the chair. She looks pensive, observing him, but then he's back on top of the cupboard again. Rosa's surprised by his antics, and a maid interrupts, announcing that dinner is ready. The wolf boy's eyes widen at the sight of the food, and Rosa's taken aback by his sudden interest. The wolf boy devours the food, and Rosa's relieved that he's finally eating. She recalls feeding him soup while he was asleep and wonders if he remembered. The wolf boy licks the plate clean, and Rosa's surprised by his table manners, or lack thereof. Rosa scolds him for sitting on the table, and the wolf boy jumps off, running towards the bed. Rosa's shocked by his sudden movement, and the wolf boy claims the bed as his own. Rosa's taken aback, breaking a loaf of bread apart as she processes the situation. Someone mentions Luke 3, and Rosa's attention is caught. She stares at the wolf boy, who's sitting up in bed, staring back at her. Rosa's surprised that he can talk, and her curiosity is piqued. She wonders about the meaning behind Luke 3 and if it's related to the wolf boy's name. Rosa's thoughts are filled with questions, and she's eager to learn more about this mysterious boy. The wolf boy tells Rosa that he doesn't know his parents, and he's been living in captivity since he was a kid. Rosa's curious about his name, but he says it's not important. He's surprised that she's even interested in knowing his name. Rosa suggests calling him Fenrir, but the wolf boy's expression turns sad. He tells her that he only shared his name with her because she's making him pay for using her bed. Rosa's amused by his response, and she teases him about the bed's expensive price tag. The wolf boy looks at her wordlessly, and Rosa thinks that he's really got no shame. He waves her off, saying that his name doesn't matter and he's willing to talk, which is what's important. Rosa's intrigued by his story and asks him why he's never talked to anyone before. The wolf boy reveals that he's never really talked to a human before, and Rosa's surprised by this admission. She thinks to herself that this boy's been living in captivity for at least 20 years, and it's shocking that he's never had a conversation with a human before. Rosa wonders what his life must have been like, stuck in the auction system, unable to be sold or connect with anyone. She's determined to learn more about his story and understand what makes him tick. Rosa's not interested in digging into the wolf boy's past, figuring it's not worth the headache. She's more concerned about his behavior, warning him that if he jumps on the table again, he'll be getting water instead of soup. She reminds him that he's only using her bed because he was a patient, and now that he's recovered, he should move back to his own room. The wolf boy ignores her, hugging the covers and turning his back to her. Rosa thinks to herself that this little brat is already ignoring her, and she's torn between throwing him out or letting him sleep in her bed for the night. She decides to let him be, sliding into bed beside him and turning off the light. As she listens to his breathing, she realizes it's been a long time since she's slept next to someone. The wolf boy's name is finally settled as Fenrir, and the mansion staff starts treating him like family, except for a few who can't hide their disdain. Rosa notices that Fenrir's highly sensitive to the malice around him, and it's clear that being a beast man is the reason for the staff's contempt. Rosa talks to Fenrir, who's perched on the closet again, and asks him why he keeps running away. Fenrir grits his teeth, glaring at her, and says it's because she's acting weird. Rosa holds up a pair of shiny black boots and asks why wearing shoes is weird. Fenrir insists he won't wear shoes for the rest of his life. Rosa teases him, saying his way of life is wrong, and at least he should try on the boots. She points out that his feet get dirty after just 5 minutes of walking barefoot, and wonders how he'll survive without shoes for 365 days. Fenrir checks his feet and says they're not dirty, and Rosa smirks, saying that's because he just took a shower. Rosa's sitting at a table, reading a book, while Fenrir's sitting quietly in a chair. It's been a while since he's caused any trouble, and he's actually been quite obedient. He's stopped running away from her, and she no longer feels his hatred. Rosa's surprised to find that she doesn't mind living with Fenrir. In fact, it's been nice having some companionship after all these years. She can't help but feel a soft spot for the kid, even if she doesn't want to admit it out loud. As she glances over at Fenrir, she notices that he's been sitting by the window a lot lately. She asks him if he's bored and if he'd like to go outside and play. Fenrir's eyes light up at the suggestion, and he asks if he can really go out. Rosa's taken aback by his response, realizing that he must have felt trapped or imprisoned. She reassures him that he's free to do as he likes, and that he can go anywhere and do whatever he wants. Fenrir looks confused, and Rosa thinks to herself that this must be what it's like for him to be given freedom after being confined for so long. Equals 7%. She decides to take matters into her own hands, calling out to him as she gets up from her chair. She invites him to follow her on a tour of the castle, and Fenrir looks at her questioningly as he trails behind her. As they walk through the forest, Fenrir's eyes widen with wonder, and he runs ahead of Rosa, laughing and smiling. He launches himself into the air, and Rosa warns him to slow down lest he falls. Fenrir looks back at her, asking if she thinks he's a kid. Rosa just smiles, saying nothing. From that day on, Rosa starts taking Fenrir on walks and showing him all the wonders of the castle. At first, he's bewildered by all the new sights and sounds, but soon he's adapting and even getting excited. Rosa's amused to find that Fenrir's not interested in the fancy decorative cabinets, but instead prefers the garden and the greenhouse. He's fascinated by the big stumps and the forests, and he loves exploring all the nooks and crannies. Rosa's happy to see Fenrir thriving, and she's grateful to have him by her side. Rosa's pondering the nature of the Karin people, wondering if they'd rather live in groups in the forest than on the plains. She thinks that Fenrir's behavior since arriving at the castle might be due to uncertainty about what he's allowed to do. As she sits across from Fenrir at the dining table, he stares at her, and she looks up, asking him what's wrong. Fenrir looks innocent, and Rosa goes back to reading her book. He continues to stare at her, admiring her beauty and thinking she's dazzling. But the peaceful moment is short-lived, as Fenrir suddenly starts groaning and screaming wildly. Noah and the maid try to calm him down, but he's having none of it. Rosa rubs her temples, thinking that the battle is starting all over again. Noah tries to reassure Fenrir that she just wants to check his health, but he's not buying it. He glares at them with bared teeth, and Rosa thinks that this is going to be a long day. Noah tries to calm Fenrir down, but he's not cooperating. Rosa comments that his recovery is taking longer than expected, and Noah agrees that they need to treat him first. Fenrir tries to attack Noah, and Rosa screams his name, trying to intervene. He jumps onto the closet, declaring that he doesn't trust doctors. Rosa tells him to stop nagging and get back down, and eventually he jumps from the closet to the bed. Rosa jokes that she'll have to clear out the display cabinets to give him space to climb. Fenrir argues that he can climb the walls, and Rosa teases him about being Spider-Man. Noah comments that Rosa and Fenrir seem closer than before, but Rosa denies it. As Fenrir lies in bed, he declares that doctors are all scammers, and Rosa can't help but laugh at his antics. Noah assures Fenrir that she's not a scammer, and Rosa grips his hand, rolling up his sleeves. Fenrir reveals that his name is indeed Fenrir, and Noah asks Rosa if she was the one who named him. Rosa explains that Fenrir was the name of her old cat, and she couldn't think of anything else. Noah mentions that she's been looking into sending Fenrir to a new home, specifically a place called Morny, which has room for him. Rosa turns away, avoiding eye contact with Fenrir, as she thinks about how she's grown accustomed to having him around. She recalls that she initially said Fenrir couldn't live in the castle, and now she needs to find a better place for him to live, where he can be independent and grow stronger. Rosa offers to donate as much money as needed to Morny, and Noah jokingly says that maybe they'll take all the wandering beastmen, even if it means spending all Rosa's money. Noah assesses Fenrir's health, saying that he looks fine and doesn't have any problems eating or digesting food. Fenrir growls and glares at Noah, and Rosa tells him to thank her for treating him. Fenrir grips the bed sheets in anger, saying that he never asked for help. Rosa tries to calm him down, but Fenrir's still seething, his eyes fixed intently on Noah. The tension in the room is palpable, and it's clear that Fenrir's not happy about being sent away. Rosa's sweating bullets as Fenrir glares at her, his anger palpable. He tells her that he never asked for treatment, only for her to save his life. He never wanted to come to the castle, and now everyone's deciding what's best for him without even asking. Rosa tries to reach out to him, but he's already storming out of the room. She shouts after him, but he's gone. Noah sighs and Rosa covers her face, feeling frazzled. Noah suggests that Rosa shouldn't follow him, but Rosa's all, "Why do I have to follow him? Am I his owner?" She thinks to herself that she needs a break. Her mind's a mess. Then she remembers that she has other patients to attend to and tells Noah that they should get going. They head out to the carriage, leaving the empty castle behind. As evening rolls around, Rosa's back in her room, sprawled out on the bed, looking utterly distressed. She thinks to herself that it's been a short time since she started taking care of Fenrir, but the castle's never felt so quiet. She wonders if it's just his species' behavior, or if it's just his bad habit to run off whenever he feels like it. Rosa throws on a black coat and heads out into the forest, searching for Fenrir. She looks up at the sky and asks aloud if she's going to have to come find him every time he runs away. She spots his shadow on a tree trunk and rests against the tree, crossing her arms. "Why don't you say anything?" she asks. "Are you sleeping?" Fenrir's response is to tell her to stop looking for him, that he's hiding, and to get out of his sight. Rosa's taken aback by his harsh words, frowning and raising an eyebrow. Rosa tells Fenrir that if he really wants to hide, he should go further away. Fenrir shoots back, asking why she didn't just leave him alone in the first place if she wanted him to disappear. Rosa thinks to herself that Fenrir's comebacks are pretty childish. She asks him how old he is, and Fenrir says he doesn't know, that he doesn't count. Rosa's surprised, asking how he can't even know his own age. Fenrir relaxes against the tree, crossing his ankles and putting his hands behind his head. He guesses that he's around 22 years old, based on a conversation he had with a kid 15 years ago. Rosa looks thoughtful, wondering about Fenrir's past. She asks him if he's ever wanted to live with humans, suggesting that the place Noah mentioned might be a better fit for him. Fenrir's skeptical, asking how he's supposed to live there. Rosa explains that he might be able to get citizenship, or she could help him get to where he wants to go. Fenrir shares his story, telling Rosa that he was captured from the other side of the continent, escaped 3 times, and got caught 4 times. He says that citizenship is useless, that if he gets caught in the capital and sold locally, he's out of luck. Rosa starts walking away, asking if he wants to stay. Fenrir says that it's not that he wants to stay in one place forever, but the thought of moving is exhausting. He enjoys the simple things, like feeling the sunset on his face. He says with a solemn look that he'll leave anyway, that this place isn't for him. Rosa says that at least this time he's not being sold. She feels a pang of unease, thinking that her feelings towards Fenrir are different from before. She realizes that she feels responsible for him. Rosa tells Fenrir that if he wants to stay, he can, but he has to obey her. Fenrir growls, his teeth gritted, and says that if he wants, he can leave her in the middle of the capital and go home alone. Rosa's taken aback by his response, feeling a mix of emotions. Rosa fires back at Fenrir, saying that if she wanted to treat him like a slave, she'd have handcuffed him by now. Instead, she's standing here talking to him like an equal. Fenrir asks what the difference is, and Rosa explains that her workers, or subordinates, have the power to choose their own path. Slaves, on the other hand, don't have that luxury. Fenrir's skeptical, asking why Rosa's giving him a choice. Rosa thinks to herself that she's not sure why she's doing it either. She tells Fenrir that he's in her hands now, and as a Peluden, she won't abandon him like a stray cat. But if he wants to leave, that's his choice. Rosa reminds him to come back on time for meals, or he'll go hungry. As she walks away, Fenrir's left standing by the tree, looking thoughtful. A maid approaches Rosa, asking if she thinks Fenrir will come back. Rosa sips her tea, saying it's up to him. The maid looks surprised, but Rosa just shrugs. Meanwhile, Fenrir's back at the castle, standing by the window. The maid spots him and covers her mouth, exclaiming in surprise. The next day, Fenrir tells Rosa he's decided to stay, and she formally introduces herself as Rosalind Idris a Peluden. Fenrir's amused, saying he thought her name was Your Highness, since that's what everyone else calls her. Rosa says he can call her that if he wants, but she doubts he will. And indeed, Fenrir never does. Later that day, Rosa's walking down a red carpet, looking fierce. A maid approaches her, bouncing up and down excitedly, and asks if she's back already. Rosa asks where Fenrir is, and the maid says he's reading books in his room. Rosa heads to his room, and Fenrir looks up as she walks in. "You're back?" he asks. Rosa notices that despite his young age, Fenrir's demeanor is surprisingly noble. Sometimes she thinks his temperament is hard to pin down. Rosa gazes into the fireplace, and for a moment she's transported back to her childhood, remembering her cat sitting by the fireplace on cold winter days. Fenrir notices her far-off expression and asks if something's wrong. Rosa closes her eyes, sighs, and says nothing's wrong, but she's not telling the truth. Since Fenrir decided to stay, he's been surprisingly content, except for one thing. Rosa raises an eyebrow as Fenrir gestures to his clothes, complaining that they're shorts, and he's not a kid. He's angry that Rosa would dress him in clothes fit for a 7-year-old. Rosa tries not to laugh, thinking that despite his protests, he still wears the clothes. She teases him, asking if the clothes fit, and pointing out that they are actually meant for a 10-year-old. Fenrir gets angrier, insisting that he's not a kid, and Rosa playfully challenges him to prove it. Things escalate quickly, and Fenrir pins Rosa to the floor, his claws out. He warns her not to treat him like a child, especially since she's smaller than him. Rosa swiftly flips their positions, pinning Fenrir down instead. She whispers in his ear, "You think I'm just a rich girl who's had everything handed to her? Think again." Rosa gets up, brushes herself off, and instructs the maid to tell the tailor to make Fenrir some new clothes. As the maid scurries off, Rosa adds, "And burn these dirty clothes," gesturing to her own clothes, which are now torn and dirty from the scuffle. From that day on, Fenrir never attacks Rosa again. She thinks to herself that no matter what happens, she's still the one in charge. As they sit across from each other at a table, surrounded by books, Rosa's struggling to educate Fenrir. She's determined to teach him, but it's proving to be a challenge. Rosa initially tried to find specialized teachers for each subject, but her high status kept getting in the way. As the Grand Duke and former princess, Rosalind Idrissa Paludan, she's surrounded by nobles who can't bear the thought of teaching a beast man. Fenrir looks at a magazine and asks Rosa why he needs to learn all this stuff. Rosa explains that if he can read and write, he'll be less likely to get tricked into signing slave trading papers. She's decided to take on the task of teaching him herself, covering the basics like writing, math, and manners. It's a challenge, but Fenrir's got an incredible mind. He memorized the entire alphabet in under 30 minutes and devoured a book in just half a day. As Rosa teaches, Fenrir raises a book and asks her to explain a particular word. Rosa smiles, impressed by his curiosity. Prosody rate. Meanwhile, in the castle hallway, Fenrir's walking down the corridor, dressed in noble attire, when he bumps into a suited man. The man screams in shock, and Fenrir turns around, confused. The man hums and scratches his neck, saying it's not Fenrir's fault. A maid walks by and scolds the man, telling him to apologize to Fenrir. The man breaks a sweat and apologizes, while Fenrir looks on, still confused. The maid and the suited man continue arguing, with the maid saying that Fenrir's reflexes are impressive, and the man complaining about having to deal with a beast man slave. The maid says that the Grand Duke is too kind to Fenrir, who doesn't even appreciate the luxuries he's receiving. The suited man agrees, saying that beast men are always arrogant and think they can do whatever they want. Little do they know, Fenrir's listening in on their conversation, his eyes narrowing slightly as he takes in their words. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and ensure to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time.